What's going on, guys? Today I'm going to be showing you my method for killing Rasial. I've been getting around 1 minute kills. They're pretty easy, no prayer flicking or anything, and this also gets around 1 minute and 30-second kills for the tier 90 gear. So stay tuned if you want to be getting some gear from the First Necromancer. I am feeding this cat. This is so stupid. Apparently you get a rat from this, and I want the rat. Check out this city. Is this not cool or what? Look at the big hourglass in the background. So this is a fairly intermediate guide, guys. It expects you to know at least the basics of necromancy combat, kind of, as well as maybe the basics to the Rasial fight. Like I've done maybe a kill or two before. But honestly, if you know nothing about the fight, it really doesn't matter that much. You can kind of just skip all the mechanics with me and, you know, ignore all of that. But yeah, this is a fairly high-level guide or intermediate guide. So if you're just brand new at combat, maybe this isn't the best guide to use. So before I get into exactly what I do for this method, I'm going to show my preset on screen here. You can see the inventory. I probably have too many prayer pots. You could fit all the runes into one rune pouch. So you could save some inventory space here. You don't even need prayer pots. But yeah, I have the really important things highlighted in green. The first one is going to be the Blood Reaver with scrolls, and I use the auto fire rate of 5 or 6 depending on how much healing you want for this method. This is really good. The passive healing from the Blood Reaver really helps, especially when you're split souling. You take kind of a lot of damage here, and like with this method, I'm just tanking a lot of damage as well. So the passive healing from the Blood Reaver is really, really solid. You could play with the auto fire rate to see what you're comfortable with, but I found 5 or 6 is probably what you want to use with this setup. You can see the relics on screen here. Fury of the Small is really good for necromancy. Conservation of Energy is also really strong. And then the third one is Death Ward. You could use Persistent Rage here, but I think Death Ward is better. You take a lot of damage here, so Death Ward really helps you stay alive, especially if you're trying not to just eat a ton of food and like save some money that way. You can kind of camp a little bit lower HP. Moving on to the gear setup. You can see I have the salve highlighted. Obviously, you're going to want to use the salve. I should probably also have the Zuck cape highlighted, although I guess technically you don't need it. But the Zuck cape is really strong here as well, and it's pretty easy to get, so I would suggest having that. As for the robes of the First Necromancer are really strong, but you could probably get away with just the tier 90 robes from Necromancy, like the ones you make. The robes of the First Necromancer pretty much just give you a passive DPS buff for your familiars, and then they last a little bit longer, which is really nice. But I think the really important thing to have for the high tier setup is the Omni Guard and Soul Lantern. This is insane. The tier 95 special attack is really, really strong. And I would definitely get this over the robes if you're like don't have a ton of money to spend or something like that. The Scripture of Jas is really strong. You could probably also use the full one, but I think the Scripture of Jas is insane here. It's fairly cheap to use, even with the pages being like 100k, it's still pretty cheap, you know. And it's really strong with necromancy. It seems like it hits a 30k almost every time. It's actually insane. I use a rune pouch because I put Vengeance in there. You don't have to use Vengeance. It's just kind of an extra thing if you want to click it. But yeah, that's pretty much all I use for the gear. You can see the perks on the side. There's only 2 special perks that I have on this. One is the Undead Slayer perk paired with, I think, Biting. And The other one is Invigorating 4 with, I think I just have mobile with that. But Invigorating 4 is really strong with Necromancy. It makes the basic attack generate even more adrenaline, which is really important for this method because it allows you to basically save a basic attack almost every single time, because you don't have to rely on like a impatient proc or anything like that. You just get the adrenaline every time. So I think that is a really important perk to have for this. And then obviously the Undead Slayer perk. For the inventory, there's kind of some extra stuff in here that you don't actually need. You don't actually need prayer pots. Like, you should kill it before you need to sip a prayer pot. And if you're using salves, you could just sip that anyway. Also, you could fit all the runes into one pouch. I just don't have it set up that way, so I just have the extra inventory slot wasted on another pouch. But yeah, pretty basic inventory. The Excalibur is highlighted in this because I think the Excalibur is insanely strong for the way that I do this. So I like to tank damage and stuff, and the Excalibur's passive healing really helps you just like not spam food the whole time. So definitely get the Excalibur if you don't have that. It's pretty easy to get. Moving on to the lower tier setup, you can see it's pretty much the same. It's just we're using the tier 90 set instead of the Necromancer and the tier 95 set basically. So this setup will get you probably around 30-second slower kills than the high tier setup, but it's all pretty easy to get, like all this gear, and again, it's a very similar setup. There's not really much more to explain here. So I'll just leave that on screen for a few more seconds. So really quickly, there's two other things I want to talk about. The first is the Undead Slayer ability. This is really good. Just whenever you're doing a lot of damage, you just click this ability and do a little bit of extra damage. And then just the Vengeance spell and Darkness spell. Both of those are pretty good, but by no means necessary. So the final thing that I want to talk about is where to stand. So as soon as you start the instance, you surge up and then you walk 1 square forward. And this is where you want to stand for the whole fight. And this is the optimal distance. Wait, whoa. Can we just take a second there to explain this yellow click? What is this? To be from Rasial. Oops. Clicked through him there, see that? So this is the optimum distance to be standing. This way he will never surge around or do any of his mechanics really. And then as soon as you are done and get him into the final phase, you surge one more time and you're up into this final area. And then you walk in this little square here, right up against the wall. And that's basically where you want to be standing. It's the optimal spot. Huge. I got the pet. You could see in the chat box. This cat has eaten so many of these ghost fish. I think he's a little bit of a porker. Look at him. Thousands of fish in there. Wow. I got a rat. Look at the little rat. Alright guys, so in the background here, I'm going to be doing a kill, or this is a recording of that, but I'm going to be explaining exactly what I do. So you can see I'm running up to the adrenaline crystal, and then I summon one of my conjures right there. So that was, as I'm going through that portal, I summoned my first conjure. And now you can see I summoned my second conjure right there, was my second conjure. And then I enter, rejoin last instance on the Rasial portal. And then you can see I enter here, and then I surge and summon my third conjure. And this is really important. You want to summon all 3 of your conjures before you enter the instance. You could use life transfer, I guess, but I don't really like starting the kill with like low HP. But you want to summon all 3 of your conjures before you enter the instance, because you're able to summon them without, wasting adrenaline or time. And the conjures do a ton of damage. So if you're sitting there summoning all of these guys, you're going to be wasting a lot of time summoning things while you could otherwise be doing damage. This probably saves you at least 30 seconds in the kill. It's a lot of abilities to cast here, because not only did I summon these, you can see if I continue playing, I command, and then I command again. So that's 5 global cooldowns that you're basically wasting to summon all of these guys and command them. And you definitely want to be doing that, or at the very least summoning all 3 and commanding the skeleton warrior. You really want to do that before you start the kill. It saves you a ton of time, and it's really easy to do. You're just like walking through the portals, like hitting, you know, a button or 2, or I guess 3 buttons. But yeah, very easy, and it saves you a ton of time on your kills and makes your kills way easier. So next up is what happens when I target cycle the boss. Now, you don't have to target cycle to the boss or anything like that. You can just click on the boss. But what I do is I target the boss and I throw a Vuln Bomb, and then I cast Death Skulls. So let's play that. So you can see I target cycled Death Skulls and threw the Vuln Bomb. You can see the purple and the Death Skulls ability. It's really important to to cast Death Skulls as soon as possible, because you want to be gaining adrenaline to use Living Death. So after you cast Death Skulls, you need to use 4 basic attacks, and this could be the Soul Strike or Touch of Death or just the basic attack. You want to use 4 of those to get back up to 100%, and that's where the Invigorating 4 perk comes in. But one thing that I've noticed is with Invigorating 4, if you use 2 basic attacks and then Touch of Death and Soul Strike, that is the best combination of basic attacks to use to get to 100% every single time. And you will get there with 4 basics every time if you do that. So you can see Soul Strike, and then just a basic attack, and then Touch of Death, and then another basic, and we are at 100%. And now that I'm at 100%, I can use Living Death and Adren Pot. So we just use Living Death, Adren Pot, a few more basic attacks. I like to use Soul Strike and then command Skeleton Warrior to get that command in before I'm going into a DPS rotation. And by the time you use command, you will already have a Death Skulls back from the Adrenaline Renewal. So you can see we now use Death Skulls again. And then you pretty much, after this, you use the Soul Split or Split Soul Necromancy spell. And then you use the Omniguard special attack. And then you basically just start spamming basic attack, something that generates the charge on the basic attack. So it's basically just basic attack, Touch of Death, basic attack, Finger of Death, basic attack, Death Skulls. And then you continue to spam Death Skulls as much as you can and the basic attack. And that's all I really do. You can see, we'll just play it through here. We're just spamming basic attacks and the things that charge it. And then whenever Death Skulls is off cooldown, we use that. So we're building here to Death Skulls. We Death Skulls. And then we just command again. And you can see I'm just camping Soul Split. If I need to, I will eat. One thing that... This is a fast kill. So if you get really good RNG, it's a fast kill like this, and you don't really have to deal with anything. And then you can see I just run in this little square. We'll get to this part in a second. There's one thing I want to explain here before we get into the final phase. So you can see I use the for Camelot thing, the Excalibur here. As soon as you use the Split Soul Curse, you want to use your Camelot as well. And that's because you're not getting any Soul Split healing, so you definitely want to be getting some extra passive healing. And during the portion of the fight, which this is usually right after you use the for Camelot, you can see he summons these ghosts. I just eat up and tank this. And the reason for that is if you run too far away, you will end up losing your Death Skulls ability. Like if you run too far away, it doesn't bounce between targets anymore. And now maybe it would work bouncing off one of the minions here, but I wouldn't risk it. It's easier just to eat to 5,000 HP and tank it. You can see here, I just eat to full, tank it. It's like a 4K hit plus whatever he hits. And then, yeah. So that's, I just eat through that. If you get a second one, you can surge here, and the ghosts, as long as you're right up against the wall here, the ghosts will not actually reach you, and you'll be fully protected from that. But as I move up, this is the rotation that I do at the end of the kill. So for the final phase, I use Death Skulls immediately. If I need to get some adrenaline, I use Soul Strike to charge up my Volley of Souls, because I have 5 stacks here, or up to 5 stacks. I can do a ton of damage. And I basically just start spamming the Finger of Death, Touch of Death, and then Command Skeleton Warrior here, just like some basic attacks. And the Death Skulls and Volley of Souls will usually do the trick. So you can see here, we Death Skulls, we use Volley of Souls, massive damage, just huge damage. And then as you can see, I'm running in this little square here. This little square here allows the Death Skulls to always bounce back to Rasial. If you run too far away, you will end up being too far and the Death Skulls will fizzle out. So you definitely want to run in this little like 3 by, what is this, like 9 or 6, probably like 6 or 7 tiles here. This like 3 by 7-ish square. And then as long as you run like in this little square pattern, usually the things won't hit you too much and you can just spam it if you're feeling like unsafe. And that's pretty much how I do a kill. It's very easy and it only really takes about a minute every time with a tier 95 gear. After this, I will show the tier 90 gear and I get probably about a minute and 30 to a minute and 40 seconds in that. So again, it's a pretty similar rotation for that, but a very easy rotation. So I know that maybe seemed a little bit confusing. It's kind of a lot of stuff going on there, but this is the basic breakdown of what is happening. If you wanted to use like Revolution or something, you could see you just put a Revo bar, something like this, and then you manually cast the abilities on the bottom. You don't really have to cast that much stuff. You can add in Split Soul in there if you want to cast that. You don't actually have to cast Split Soul, but it is really strong if you do. So you could add Split Soul in there. And then like the Vuln Bomb, I guess, if you want to toss that. I would suggest doing that. It helps a lot, but I don't really do anything crazier than that, like Vengeance or any of that stuff. Usually, like sometimes I'll Venge, but you know. Okay, so we are starting this kill off the exact same way. This is the budget gear kill, so you can watch in the background. It starts out exactly the same as the other kill where we use Death Skulls and everything. But the main difference in how we do this kill is we basically alternate between Touch of Death and Finger of Death and Soul Strike and Volley of Souls. So it adds one more ability in, and you pretty much just alternate between using those two types of things and then filling with the basic attack. And it works pretty similarly. It's just, you can also use the special attack from the tier 90 weapon, but it's not that big of a deal. You will probably get one mechanic throughout the fight, and that is going to be the mechanic where he gets all 5 stacks and then uses Volley of Souls against you. And you can easily deal with that mechanic by just praying Necromancy and then using Devotion if you have low HP or something like that. You can use Limitless to get there, but yeah, pretty easy to deal with that. But then again, you just go back to Soul Split, and overall the kill works pretty much the exact same. You just don't quite have as much DPS. So as you can see, we do the final phase very similarly with Death Skulls. I had to build to get to it here because my rotation wasn't super clean. This wasn't the greatest kill, but yeah. Again, it's a very similar concept, very easy. Once you get the hang of it, the hardest part here is moving at the end. A good way that I have done it is ability and then click, and then ability and click. And once you get into a rhythm of it, you can easily dodge the shadows. But yeah, pretty similar kill, just a little bit slower. We crashed. Oh, we crashed. Well, all right, guys, that is the end of the video. There's a little zombie fella right here just kind of crashing me, but it is what it is. We'll just kind of roll with it. So if you guys found this video helpful, or you guys liked this video, be sure to drop a like on it. It definitely helps promote the channel. And yeah, I'm gonna get out of here before this zombie gives me some kind of disease.